What's up, everybody? We got Lance Coffman back for part two. He wanted to jump on to talk commercial because we both thought in this environment that's more challenging for everyone, diversifying, getting more revenue per inspection, other revenue streams, other inspection types is top of mind for everybody. And he's been doing commercial for a while now. So he has a bunch of tips and tricks and kind of his experience to tell when it comes to the commercial side of the business. Because I know this winter and all of 2024 everyone should be thinking a lot more about how to squeeze every last bit of revenue out of every inspection, different inspection types, other services you can add for your clients. So Lance is great when it comes to all that and just a great all around person. So hope you enjoy the conversation. And we'll be putting out more episodes soon. Thanks. Where are you at?
I'm at our house right now. There's a little we're in a community, so there's a pond behind me, and it's finally pretty enough to sit outside and not burn up.
It's a beautiful background. Yeah, I love it.
So we're gonna enjoy it today while I can. So
Very cool, man. Well, thank you for your patience in making this
yeah,
happen with me. We scheduled enough times for you to say, okay, what works for you. So I
yes.
really, really appreciate that. I'm recovering on gaining control of my calendar again. I think a lot of us listening can relate. I looked up our last episode, by the way. It was episode 53.
Okay.
This is
You
gonna be
only
like,
have the episodes since then. That's all you've done so far.
yeah, 50, 60 at this point. So we're like 115 or 20 at this point. But um I remember how many people reacted to it, and I know you guys got some outreach afterwards, so it was kind of cool reflecting on that because your guys' story of maybe not being the traditional insiders or people from the industry inspired like so many. Do you remember like the people that reached out after that?
I do remember we had quite a few. So I know that we did a podcast. So Britt and I came on first, and then I think we actually had when Matt and Kaylin joined us for the second one. So and they were one of the first ones to reach out to us after that initial. And then
Wow.
now they're owners in our company, and we're running a whole other state. So yeah, that was pretty cool. And every now and then, I think Britt still gets people reach out, and I get people on Facebook reach out too. So I mean,
Yeah,
it went further than we thought it would. So
it's amazing. I think both had over 1,000 downloads and listens, which is pretty for our industry really cool, right? It's like that percentage wise, that's a lot.
I think so too. I think it's cool that many people want to check in and at least
Oh,
see your
cool.
stuff, but also are interested in what's going on. So
Yeah. Yeah. How are Matt and Kaylin doing?
they're doing all right. So we have gone through. I don't think anybody would care if I say this as a company. So Matt and Kaylin, they are on my Forever Home inspection side. So residential, they're their owners. Focus, it's really just me and Bert. I say Bert, Brittany, my wife. I call her Bert. That's our nickname for her is Bert.
That's adorable. I love
If I say Bert, that's who I meant. Not another guy. It's my wife, Britt. Um,
it.
so last year was a really challenging time for our companies, and not because you have the ebbs and flows of real estate anyway. It's not that. It's both of our women leaders in our company were gravely sick last year.
Mm,
So last year, Brittany was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and just came out of nowhere. And then at the same time, Kaylin got cancer. And so both of them are recovering and working through that stuff. And of course, their time in our companies has jumped back respectfully, and
right.
but they're still going strong. And so that was a really it was a really weird year for us because there was a lot going on with us personally, and then you throw in how the market reacted to everything and how it's kind of still in the downward trend. And there was a lot of time to reflect and try to figure out what are you going to do next, and how's everyone's roles going to look. And I mean, obviously they're still extremely active in our companies. We couldn't do what we do
Sure.
without Kaylin and Brittany, but yeah, it was tough. So we're coming off, it doesn't feel like we've ended that saga, right? They're healthier, they're getting better, and they're on the upward, but it's still there, and it's still a part very much of our story and journey. So yeah, so it's not like it just went away. We're still
Right.
dealing, and like I said, you top that on top of everything else in our industry. It's just kind of, it's been a very I say somber, but also probably methodical and slow, intentional year, and I think we're better for it. So
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, my thoughts. are with you guys, both amazing women, and cannot even imagine. And so I'm sorry you guys are going through that on top of whatever else is getting thrown at you. But if anyone's equipped to kind of get through it, it's you guys, knowing you guys. And so thank you for sharing that. I think that vulnerability, I'm sure there's people out there in different ways that can relate to kind of this last year and adversity
Yeah.
that a lot of people are going through.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are several home inspection companies or, inspection companies in general that are large groups. And so they're running more like a big business. But a lot of us, even though if we are businesses, we're still small business.
Right.
And, you know, it's one of those things, if you just go to work 8 to 5 for a big company, right? Everyone's personal lives are kind of left to the side and you just go do business and you go home. But when you're running a business like this and you're in your business and you're working on your business, personal life is always a part of it. And so, I'm sure everyone can understand from probably from COVID to now, just kind of how their business feels and how they're trying to run that parallel to their personal lives. It hasn't been easy for most people. So I can certainly be empathetic toward that.
It's so
Absolutely.
intertwined, right? And then you add in the spouse aspect. I think a lot of our listeners can relate to, because 97, 98% of our industry are probably solo up to 5 inspectors, maybe.
Yeah.
And a lot of it does include spouses. And so a whole other element. It's all included. It's all a package deal, right? And I think
Right.
like as much as people think it can be separated, it's just not.
No, it can't be. I don't think I want it to be. You know what I
Right.
mean? That's
Yeah.
I think it makes it a much sweeter package when you can live life and realize that, hey, I'm doing something and it's providing for us as a family and as a community. That reverberates and it speaks bigger to than just being an inspector. So
Sure. Absolutely.
yeah,
Well, send them both, our best from the team.
yeah,
We'll talk offline afterwards. If there's any ways we can help and support,
sure,
definitely ready and willing.
yeah. I appreciate that, and I'm sure they will too.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I know you wanted to talk some commercial, so shifting gears. It's a relevant topic, I will
Yeah.
say. I think the
Okay.
word commercial has come up, and I've heard it more in the last year.
Okay.
Probably I did in the prior 5 years, which
Wow. Okay.
is a shift in what people are thinking about. And so maybe we can just let's define it first for people, because I think some hear commercial and think it's these skyscrapers, these huge buildings downtown.
Yeah. Absolutely. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, how do you think about commercial? What was kind of your intro to it, or kind of like what got you kind of thinking about this in the first place?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, back around 2018, um, we started getting calls for individuals wanting us to do commercial properties.
Hmm.
And it wasn't just like a small quadplex or something like that. They had, car washes and offices and all this stuff. And when you start becoming more well known in the community as a home inspection group, everybody starts just looking to you and inspections regardless. And so, I realized that there is no, if you will, license or technical certification one has to be a commercial inspector.
Right.
And so I did not feel comfortable though doing them because I really didn't know much about it. I had done some stuff, but not enough to, I feel like, provide good service to my clients.
Right.
But we started figuring it out, and that was around the same time that Internachi, started CCPIA,
Right.
and I'm very much a big part of that. And I took I think I was their first one of the first ones, if not the first class that they taught on how to be a commercial inspector.
Oh,
I,
sweet.
I went up to Boulder and took their class. And then Brittany was sitting at a coffee shop down the street in Boulder building our website at the same time I was taking classes. So if anybody knows my wife, that's who she is. And she was already figuring out how to make it work with Spectora, how to make it work on a website. And it helped that we already had Forever Home going.
Yeah.
So we had an understanding and a baseline. But I graduated from that class and she put everything online. And literally the next week, we were getting calls for commercial. And so we realized it was really a niche market where a lot of people weren't fitting because what people, like you said, commercial, I think they think it's these big, massive buildings. And it is. And we do those buildings. but it's really a lot of small office buildings or maybe small apartment complexes. I mean, there's 100 different styles of building that one would incorporate as a commercial. Um, what I realized is you have, and this is not to downgrade home inspectors who can do commercial, because there are home inspectors who are extremely knowledgeable, that have far more knowledge and experience than I do, that can do a commercial building. They just do residential.
Hmm.
But you had these residential inspectors who did light commercial. I don't understand what light commercial is. That's just the vernacular they
Yeah.
use. And then you have these large due diligence or engineer type firms who are doing these big technical ASTM vernacular inspections. And there's a big middle gap. And I realized that, hey, we could fit into that really easily, that gray area. And the majority of our clients are, you know, people who want to start a business and they have no idea how to manage this building. And I realized that there was a much greater need to be a business liaison and partner than there was just be an inspector.
Mm.
Whereas home it's schedule, inspection, report, next, rinse, repeat. And commercial, it's not like that. Sometimes you'll do one quick and be done, but a lot of times I end up being this trusted third party that sits at the table, if you will, and helps them better understand, here's the process, here's your building, here's your bottom line. And I found that that was very beneficial. And then a lot of people weren't doing it, and it wasn't hard to get started doing that. So that's really how Focus got started. And then, you know, what I love about commercial is there's no emotion, it's all money. And so, whereas residential, it's all emotion, it's very personal.
Right.
You know, commercial with wonderful, and I thrive in that arena, but also in commercial, it's like, hey, we need a service, it's going to cost this much, and we need to tell you how much we have to spend on the back end to make this building profitable. And like I said, it's very, very business, and I realize I liked that a lot. And so, putting our experiences from residential over to commercial, it didn't take much to jump that gap. And you know, and then having something like CCPIA was extremely helpful, because there are multiple people within this space that want to be helpful, that want people to grow and be successful. And that's kind of where I got to where I was with CCPIA.
So, okay. So the training you found very helpful in understanding these different building types, like a car wash or a small office building. It was kind of catered to that.
Yeah, it was. So, I mean, it discussed the systems differently, right? So, when you come from a small electrical system up to, you know, a big 3, 4 phase type system in a building, or just the equipment and everything is really different. A lot of it's kind of similar, and so it's helpful to have that base knowledge. But you know, it is different, and then how it's applied is vastly different. So, it was helpful to get started on that. But just like anything, you only get just enough to get going. You have to be hungry to want to learn more. And
Learn on the
so
job.
and that's really what separates you, is how much are you willing to learn and
Sure.
get interest. Yeah.
So on those buildings, are you working with the acquirer of these office buildings or the tenants that are moving in, or both?
Yeah. The clients in commercial are almost different from each project. So we're dealing with people who might be buying a building.
Hmm.
We might be working with someone who is leasing a property, right? So maybe they're getting into a triple or double net lease, and they need help navigating that and inspecting it and then presenting that back to the building owner. We do a lot of inspections for, like, for example, we work with the Catholic diocese. They have close to 400 properties all over Oklahoma, and they just want maintenance inspections. They want to know, hey,
Sure.
here's all these schools, here's all these churches, offices, rectories, whatever. We need to know yearly, what do these look like? And how is that going to be profitable for us? And what do we need to be expecting on a maintenance side? And so that's the good thing about commercials. You really can make money doing almost anything when it comes to a
Right.
building, as long as you kind of know how to speak to someone, or know what you want to do. It's much easier than residential in that regard.
Yeah. And is there more, I guess, expectation or even, I get, for lack of a better term, like less worries about liability because these people do want some guidance on maintenance or what to expect on costs? Like, does it feel, do you feel like there's more leeway there and trust, I guess? Because I know in residential, sometimes everyone's like, oh, I don't talk about costs to
Right.
remedy.
Yeah. Commercial is certainly not as litigious as residential is.
Right. Which is
Absolutely
amazing.
not. Yes, it's not. It's not where you miss an outlet behind a chair that was covered up. Someone's going to call you, 7 years later and want to sue you. It
Right.
doesn't work that way. You're very much, like I said earlier, a business partner.
Yeah.
And that's how you sell yourself. You sell yourself and your service as I'm a business partner with you, and we're going to work on your bottom line together. And so I think in that regard, it is vastly different and it's easier to navigate because, yeah, when someone reaches out to you, they have a definitive need and it's, I have a building and I need to make money in this building and I need your help.
Mm.
Or it's different, obviously, on the other spectrum of it. And there's a lot of communication that one has to learn, and I just learned that from being in the field and messing up and hearing people talk about it and asking a whole bunch of questions. Because I realized again in commercial, which surprised me, I thought it was going to be more difficult. On the residential side, it's weird being a home inspector because you're selling your goods to agents and they're not buying your goods,
Right.
right? You're working real hard to get these
Mm.
agents on board. It's like they're not the end user of your product. What we're on resident or on commercial, I work with less agents than I do just buyers. But the agents that I have found, they're extremely open and they're business minded too, and they realize they have to work together with other professionals. So it's easy to grab a coffee or a drink and just sit down and pick their brain. Whereas residential, it seems much more difficult to do that. They feel like they're
Right.
probably getting inundated with sales from everybody all the time. And commercial, it's not like that. So I'd say if you're not afraid to ask questions and get in front of people, then there's a lot to learn and it's not too hard to learn.
Yeah. Is there any sense for how, like, magnitude wise, the size of the commercial market, maybe even in your area, is compared to residential? Is it bigger than people think? Like, I'm trying to wrap my head around like the opportunity for you and others, even thinking of the light to mid commercial.
You know, I would say probably since COVID, especially, I have seen more commercial building for sale or for lease signs than I ever have.
Wow.
And I only did it for a year before COVID really came in, and I was really just getting started then, so I hadn't really got my feet all the way wet. Um, but I can't drive a block, and again, I'm in Tulsa, so it's a fairly large city for
Yeah.
Oklahoma. Um, and every street I drive down, there's a for sale sign for a commercial building, and so
Just
people are
opportunity.
moving commercial. It's
Opportunity.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of I think there's opportunity, but the opportunity lies in networking more so than it does the demand, because commercial is one of those things where people are buying and selling under the table all the time.
Ah,
So if you're in conversation and you're on someone's mind, then you get brought to the fourth or the front of the conversation. Whereas residential, you really just live and die by the market.
right.
Like I said, with commercial, if the market is slow and people aren't buying and selling, I'm going to take a folder and start knocking on people's commercial building doors and saying, "Hey, do you guys have inspections annually? Why not? Let's have that conversation." You can make sales happen more so than I think you can on residential.
That's that's a keen insight. Yeah, because I think residential, it's really well documented the number of transactions, agents that do number of deals. It's all out there in the open and discoverable. Whereas commercial feels like this kind of like black box sometimes, kind of like it just happens. And a lot of us
Yeah.
don't know how many dollar amounts. Um, so I wonder how much discovery is out there that inspectors could be doing, like you said, with the networking. So I think that's like a great tip. Yeah, how did you go about initially kind of just putting your name out there and networking besides the website? Sounds like that was a good catalyst from the start.
Yeah, if you don't have presence online in today's society, then you're not going to be found. And I know that to be true because there are residential inspection groups in my town that are legacy inspection groups that have been around forever and that do commercial. And sometimes when I put a proposal in, they're like, "Oh, so and so is up against you as well," and I'm like, "When do they enter the chat?" And but it's one of those things where they're not organically being found.
Right.
So if unless you have an online presence, you're not doing yourself a service. But beyond that, it's one figuring out who's doing commercial in town, right? So
Mm.
find the agents because there are agents, and there's agents at like your McGraw and your Remaxes and places, but also there's also very, kind of niche market agents where there's two people and they just do like industrial or multifamily, whatever.
Right.
Just find those people and talk to them and ask them what they do and give them information and just keep working with them. but I think the bigger thing too, outside of that, is finding organizations to put yourself in. So, for example, I'm not a part of the diocese, but I've been able to be a part of that community, and it's
Right.
been helpful. Um, I also am a part of the apartment association in town for Oklahoma. I am a part of the assisted living association, and I create courses based on knowledge I already know, or I can literally take a class from International or CCPIA, change it just a little bit and make it my own class and turn around and teach it back in layman's terms. And all the resources are there, and you're giving them tools to be successful. And they may not use you immediately, but you're now in the conversation. And then you have a foot in the door. And sometimes that's all it takes, is just willing to network with commercial. I
Yeah.
think it's hard to network in residential because, if I go look at my list right now on our Construction Industry Board website, there's probably 120 licensed home inspectors just in the Tulsa area.
Right.
And how many of them are buying cups and shirts and paying for lunches and doing this and all this? And you're like, this is a grind and a leg race that feels like there's no winning. But on on commercial, you can create value for yourself in your networking, and it's vastly different.
Yeah.
And it's not that hard. It's just a lot of people don't think about the ideas that one can create. And honestly, I didn't either. If I didn't have a Brittany, I wouldn't be successful. Let's be honest. Like, if she's not here to fend for herself, but if I didn't have a Brittany who says, "Hey, why are we not doing this?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I never thought about it." She's like, "Well, go knock on that door and ask them why they're not doing it." It's kind of, so you kind of have to have that mentality too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you guys are so admirable, and I just love your approach where it's this kind of light approach of kind of like, oh, we don't know. Well, let's just go ask. Or like, hey, we're not sure. Let's go find out. And let's just go find
Right.
the answers. That curious mindset, I think, like lead has, I think led to a lot of your success. You mentioned annual maintenance inspections. So these types of relationships, they almost, maybe not for insurance or liability reasons, but are more open to the recurring relationship. Whereas residential, we've never cracked that as an industry, right? Like it's so hard to get a homeowner to care to do an annual.
Right. Or to spend, $200-300 just to do a walkthrough. Yeah, it's one of those things. Like, for example, I'll give away some of my secrets here. With like apartments, right? It's really hard to do. If anyone's done an apartment, and I mean, we're doing, 1, 2, 300 door apartments, right?
Mhm.
There's 6 buildings, whatever. It takes a long time to do that project. Um, and it's a lot of work to orchestrate that. But if you go to an apartment association, you say, hey, here's what it would cost for me to do an exterior only inspection annually,
Mhm.
right? Because a lot of them are trying to just do the best they can to keep maintenance up,
Right.
and they're falling behind every day. So to be able to give them something and say, here's what you need to work on now and then in the future, and here's how much it might cost, that's huge for them as a property manager.
Sure.
And the same for any other type of building. And it may not be annually, right? You may not get to do them every year, but you may get to do them every couple years. So
Sure.
the thing about commercial is you can kind of project and plan out, if you're a good salesman, how much you think you're going to make this quarter.
Right.
And you keep doing it that way, and you set up deposits and you have it all ready to go. I mean, that's the end goal of what we're trying to incorporate as well. And so, but I'll be honest, I didn't know those things were possible until someone just called me one day and said, hey, this is what we need. And I go, oh, I never even thought about doing that.
Right.
And then you just implement it, and you realize if they can do it, I bet other people would do it too. And then you just make the calls and you'd be surprised.
So it's kind of just a gap in the low to mid commercial market, right? Because who would they have used otherwise? They just wouldn't do it, right? When you think of the grounds or exterior of an apartment building, I'm trying to even think like, who would they normally go to for this? It's not
They
established
want
precedence, right? There's no one to do it.
Right. And I think that's the biggest sell conversation for people, is saying, it affects your bottom line in such a negative manner if you were always reactionary with your building maintenance.
Right.
Right. So how can we be proactive? What can you be looking for in the future? How can you plan every year annually for that on your budget? And just that type of conversation, it at least will get you in the door. You may not get the win, but they'll be thinking about it. So
Yeah. What about condo complexes? Because I think I own a condo and HOA dues go up, and there's always these last minute special assessments, right? And so in my mind, I'm thinking like, this makes me think of, man, if condo complexes could get ahead of some of these costs, there wouldn't need to be these last minute meetings to raise dues or raise HOA fees.
correct. Yep.
It's a similar
Absolutely.
concept, right?
It is. It is. It's just telling them what needs to happen up front, and then letting them make that plan of action. But you put together a plan for them.
Sure.
That's where you come into. It's not just here's an inspection report, here you go. It's, here's our report, but also here's these other items. And what I think people realize, or they're probably forgetting in commercial too, is commercial really is a project manager role. And so I can
Mm,
come in, I can inspect a small office space. But let's say, for example, I have an industrial building, right? We did one not too long ago where it was a 200,000 square foot industrial building. It had railroad tracks, it had 15 overhead cranes, it had this and this. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, I can't do those, but I know people who can. So I'm going to start calling people, getting prices, putting it together, packaging it, orchestrating it, getting them the last result, and then, wrapping it all together. And so that is something that I think people go, well, I don't know anything about that type of building, so why I can't do that inspection? No, you just need to know the right people, and you need to be the mouthpiece for the inspection. So,
oh, there's so much value in that. And I love that you framed it in that way because look, everyone faces imposter syndrome on some level, but to be the person that quarterbacks it and makes it happen and just makes connections, that connectors to me have so much value in this world in terms of just connecting people. So sometimes will they ask you like, hey, HVAC person, do you know someone, you recommended XYZ. Do you know anyone that can help? I imagine you're the connector
yeah,
on that front too, right?
yeah. I mean, and you can do that, even in residential, right? If you go to our website right now, we have a preferred vendor page that we have all vetted, and we put all their information on our page. And great, it's backlinks and everything too, but it's, that's information's great. But on the commercial side, we take it one step further. So, and this is what I'm teaching at the InterNACHI conference in like 45 days. Good God, that's happening now, anytime
Yeah.
now. Is how to take a defect. Let's say, for example, your HVAC rooftop system is in poor condition, how to evaluate that, how to understand the life expectancy of it, and then also know how to create a cost to repair that. So if
Mm.
I know that this system cost X amount, $10,000 to replace, then I'm going to say, hey, in the next 10 years, you're going to want to replace this. It's going to cost this much money. Here's also some numbers and some inflation to put with it so you can expect that. Immediately, this is what we think you need. Now, this is just an opinion. However, we know maintenance cost about, maybe $600 to do this. So
Right.
we build that out. So not only are we giving them a list of defects, we're giving them a life expectancy on their product. We're giving them an opinion of how much it's going to cost. And then we also give them people to do that work for them. So when they're ready for it. And so again, that comes to where you have to be able to get on the ground and build relationships. So it's not just building relationships with agents, it's roofers, it's electricians, plumbers, guys who lay asphalt, people who put up siding. I mean, there's 100 different people that you have to continually be thinking about. But it's that full package and saying, we really are taking care of all of this legwork for you. And they pay really well for it. So for the most part, I mean, you make a whole lot more money in commercial than you do residential if you're doing it right. And
You're
like you
so
said, in it's hard to it's hard to go, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm doing. I shouldn't be giving this proposal. But they think you are the most important, most knowledgeable person ever because you put a website up that said I can do commercial,
yeah,
right? So
yeah,
they trust every word that comes out of your mouth. You just have to believe your own self when you speak. So I
yeah.
think that's the hard part. Yeah.
And I said differently, I think to be in your shoes, you don't have to know it all before doing it. You just have to have the time and foundational skills to know how to go research and find the people because the building owner, whoever runs the diocese, they're not going to go do this stuff. They don't have the time or expertise or knowledge. And so they are paying in a sense for your time to build those relationships and to connect people. And so I love it. To me, when the way you worded that, it adds so much value. And that's all I hear is like the easy button for people, and people will pay well for the easy button. What do you, so many inspectors still are so fearful of adding this much value for some reason in terms of liability. We're a liability conscious group, right? Let's just say it how it is. I think, do you believe the fear of getting sued is overblown when it comes to providing more value in terms of costs? Because the typical response is, oh, what if I say it's 900 and it's $901 and then they sue me?
Right. Well, and that's the thing too in commercial is when I give them a cost, it is what it's going to cost normally at a high rate and at a professional rate.
Right.
And that's also when you use the right vernacular. Again, when I say this is a professional opinion of cost, right? So nationally, if someone were to replace this rooftop unit, it's going to cost between this and this. That doesn't mean someone can give you a deal, or it doesn't mean a different brand can give you a rebate, or,
Yeah.
that's all has to be a part of it. But you're saying expect somewhere in this range. I think what ends up happening in residential is you do your inspection and they go to the TRR period and you say, hey, you need a new electrical panel. It's an old recalled panel. It's about, $1,500 to replace or whatever. And Chuck in a truck does it for 600, right? And so it's like everyone's always trying to make a deal and make it cheaper and get quicker. And I think, in residential in general, the way we're building houses, the way we're operating, it has that feel, right? It's
Yeah.
quick and cheap and let's get it over with. And it's not like that in commercial. They have to plan and they have to be ready for it. And they know, hey, you're buying an old building. So if you don't replace this system in 5 years, you don't make money.
Right.
So they're like, well, how much is it? 3,000 today will guarantee I make 100,000 next year. So we're going to pay the 3,000. It's
Yeah.
again, it's just a different mindset. And you also have to put yourself in that mindset. And that's hard. I think that's the hardest thing. It's like you said, you have to remove yourself from residential and everyone wanting to sue and everyone, being over the top in response and just saying, no, this is a business deal. This is not, a personal purchase. This is for them to make money. So
Right.
they're really going to rely on you in a much different sense.
Yeah. And even having been a realtor in the residential space and talking costs and estimates with people, I still think you give ranges, you explain the context with the ranges of saying this is the mid to high quality provider. Yeah, you may find Chuck in a truck to do it for 200. That's not what I'm giving you the range on. And disclaiming things properly. And I think like the communication part is I think what our industry lacks. I think and that's where the fear comes in of like, yeah, you just give someone a number and walk away. Of course, there's going to be room for misinterpretation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think of the program Repair Pricer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it's a great program, and I think it's great to be able to say, hey, here's all your defects. They're going to put numbers to you together and give it back to your client and say, here's maybe what you can expect in repairs. What ends up happening though, and what I found to be difficult is they take that list and for some reason in residential, that is like the end all be all list, right? They're like, my inspector said this will cost $200. And they're like, well, actually, it's only like 100 locally. They're like, no, it's got to cost two because he said that's the best. And so
Right.
I'm not paying. Or they're like, well, it's actually 300. They're like, no, he said 200. And I'm not getting anyone that doesn't do 200. And I don't want to have to put that really difficult conversation on a realtor. And you can speak better to this, where it's like that juggling act of, I
Yeah.
know he said this, but I don't really have to deal with that in commercial.
Yeah.
So,
Beautiful thing.
yeah.
And that's why, I think it's a good service for general directional guidance, but nothing beats three quotes from three people on the ground that are actually going to take the job or not. And that's where that'll, to me, always be undefeated. And so to me, connecting people to the pros that are high rated, because that's real time supply and demand. I think algorithms they have limits as to the data
Yes.
that they're all pulling. So that's
Yeah.
where I'm hopeful for industries like this, where I'm like, that'll never go away. Like me talking to you and asking how much you'll do it for next week. No AI, will, will do that.
Well, and, when you have something, I don't know if you're familiar with like RS Means or some other company that does this, let's put numbers together for you. Let's do takeoffs and construction estimates and all that. Some of that stuff we use in the field, but it takes legwork to call your local electrician and say, how much would you cost
Right.
hourly? How much does it cost to replace this? And call two others you trust, and then put those numbers together and create an average. And then know every like half the year, 6 months later, I'm gonna have to call them again and get it something different. But like you said, I like that because it's local, real time numbers that I can go, hey, I know three electricians now that would charge you between $600 and $900. I know it's not exact, but it'll get you started. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's really all. That's really all they need. We have to get out of the mindset that we have to give them exacts because I'm not an electrician, right? I
Right.
can't. And every now and then, if I find a roof that's in really bad shape, I may call a roofer to come out that same day and go, hey, come look at this roof real time with me and give them an exact cost today. and they'll do that because it's it's work for them, and they trust that I know what I'm talking about. So
I like the point on not exacts because I think we all tend to forget the average buyer needs just a nudge in the right direction. And that's super helpful, because I've heard some inspectors say, oh, how helpful is that? Just pointing them in the right direction. I'm like, very helpful to a millennial that doesn't know, doesn't know anything about homes.
yeah, yeah.
Just tell them who to call. I think more than ever, buyers need to kind of be handheld and they will pay more, is my thought, for some guidance.
Well, and that's something I love about Spectora, especially with some new stuff where I can go in and I can add professionals to my defect, right? And so you can
Mhm.
go in and manipulate that list, and you can add them to it. And we're working on that right now on our reports to have, here's the issue, here's who to get a hold of, and then we can drop a link back to our website with those third party people.
Right.
So we can get people back to our website and show them what the work we've been doing. Because Kaylin works really hard to put those people together. And so I want people to know we have a great vetted list of people, and that we can implement that into our report too. So, like you said, I don't want that ever to go away. And I don't think it will, not for some time. So,
Yeah. The
unless
way
AI starts with concrete, I don't know if that's ever going to happen. So, I
right,
mean,
right.
if that ever happens, yeah, maybe we're in trouble. But
And I think no matter how inspectors feel about monetizing the work, the relationships and the connections they're making, I wholeheartedly believe there's value in that. And I think whether it's through advertising through you guys or on a lead basis, whatever it is, I do believe there should be a way in every state that payment can and should be facilitated to the people that are the connectors and drive the value. And to give you my back, context on that, like in any other industry, the people that generate leads or connect people to others typically get compensated in some way for it. What are your thoughts on that, given that some inspectors will say, oh, it's a blanket state law, I can't be compensated in any way? I think it's more nuanced than that. There's got to be ways to make it to like actually compensate inspectors for all the value they're driving when they are making and keeping these relationships. So it's a long-winded question, but like, what are let's riff on that for a second in terms of how you feel about it.
yeah, um, you know, I think, and it's weird because up in Iowa where we're located, there is no licensing board.
Mm,
So we're running a team up there that doesn't have to be licensed. They just have insurance. I still make them take the NHIE, because I think it's an extra step in its value. But here in Oklahoma, it's very much licensed, and so there's a lot of gray area there. Like for example, I understand the whole you don't want me to go out, do an inspection, find 5 items, and then also say, hey, by the way, I can fix these for you as
right.
soon as you move in real cheap, right? Because then I'm looking for work, and that mixes everything in a poor moral stance. So I get that. But I don't, even if people think they're reading it, I'm not quite sure there's verbiage in there that says you can't provide figures, that you can't provide references and referrals and those type of things. And I almost feel like we have gotten to a point where our market is so litigious and people are so scared. It's like you deliver a report and the comment on the report is this outlet doesn't work, call an electrician. And that's it. And like you don't
That's
want to
it.
say anything else. And you're like, and what we're trying our so best to do on our side is educate people.
Yeah.
So it's like this outlet doesn't work, and here's why we think this outlet doesn't work. The next step is to call a licensed electrician to come out and replace that outlet. And here's some people that we recommend to do that. Whether the seller uses them, what I mean, that's on their own. But we're
Yeah.
giving our experience, and I just feel like we've gotten to a point where we've stripped it down so much where we're just scared to give people a really good product. And for most people, our average inspection is around $500, and then you add all these extra services to it. That's not cheap today for someone to go buy a home. It's already expensive to buy a home, and
Right.
then you add a $700 inspection to it. You hope that you can provide them some great detail. And I see inspectors reports, and they're very much like you're saying. Everyone's really scared to give information, and I think we should be able to say we've worked really hard to build relationships, and we think it's going to cost you about this much because we trust the people that we work with. So here's a cost, and here's those people. Use it if you want, kind of scenario. I realize that we give the stuff to you, the agent, and then you carry it on. And so whatever happens in that conversation, we can't control. But I think we should be. I think it should be a standard. I think there should be more that we can provide to people. And I know someone's watched this video and they're giving me a stink eye on the other side of it, and that's fine. But I think we have to be able to give more because we have an influx in the market of inspectors, and everyone's just coming in and everyone's undercutting everyone just enough, right? So they can get business, and they're just giving just the bare minimum because that's all they're really trained to do. So I don't know. I mean, you guys have done a fantastic job to be able to bridge that gap with some professionals and have add-ons and be able to make a little extra money for inspectors, which we've utilized. And um, I don't know how that conversation moves forward. I don't know how that gets implemented. I'm sure you guys probably have some things you're thinking of to make that more formidable, but
You
I
know,
don't
it's
know. I just think,
conversations like this
yeah,
and
I just think we just need,
educating,
yeah,
because you, to your point, if our industry does start tacking to that direction of minimalism, we're it,
yep,
inspectors would be commoditizing themselves, right? Because if it all ends up looking the same and is very vague, you lose the ability to differentiate and charge more, thus driving prices down, thus destroying economics in our industry, which is terrible for all of us, right? So when you put it that way, I'm like, you're going to be in a good position because you're skating to where the puck's going by saying like, oh, if everyone's getting generic, I'm going to add way more value because then people pay for value.
right, right. I don't,
Because
yeah,
yeah, to the inspectors listening, it's like if you want to just make yourself generic, you're going to make yourself extinct. No,
mhm.
like
I agree with that. Yeah. I mean, look around you and see how many other people are getting licensed every day and every week. And I want to be in a market where it's competitive and that I know that if someone's taking an inspection from us, like they're really offering something and they're a really, really solid company. And I know, okay, they didn't choose me, but I know they're getting something good, right?
right.
What gets us upset is when we know that we're just getting picked apart because, you turn around and now there's 50 more licensed people and they're just giving the bare minimum. And, they're just, that's what the market tastes like now. And that's what's expected. Um, so I don't know. I think it's a conversation that continues, and we have to figure out how can we provide more to our clients. What education can we get? What conversation should we have? How can we better ourselves? Because we are generalists, and that's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard to be a generalist, right? And that's the thing that's foreign to me is when I take the generalist mindset in residential, but then I move it over to commercial. And commercial, um, that's held with esteem. They're like, yes, you are a generalist. You know everything about this building, and we need that.
We need
So
that.
who do we go to? Right? And over on residential, it's like, yeah, you're just a generalist. One of the things that bothers us so much, and this is any inspector, they'll say the same thing, is they do their inspection based on the SOP. And then let's say an electrician comes in afterward and like, I can't believe your inspector missed that. They're terrible. They should have caught that. And you're just like, you don't know what I do, in my business. You don't know how I'm supposed to inspect. And so everyone just kind of looks down on us in that regard. So, and that's everybody's dealing with that, not just us. So
Yeah, it's a narrative. It takes a long time to flip that narrative and change it because it takes 20, 30,000 inspectors communicating a little better, communicating exactly the purpose of a generalist, and it is to connect you. And that's where I think this bridges the gap of connecting people to those professionals, and those professionals will have a different viewpoint of inspectors because they're like, oh, they're a source of business because they don't know everything about an electrical panel. And it's kind of the point. I think it's just like there's still, how old's this industry? 40, 50 years, and there's still a misunderstanding of what they do. Sometimes I tell people I run a home inspection software company and they go, oh yeah, I had an appraisal on my house. I'm like, no.
yeah, still different, still different. Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think the thing too is it's that, like you said, it's that conversation of, and that's how I got started. So when I first got started in home inspection, I joined a networking group, and I realized that every week we'd sit down, and in those networking groups, you go around the table, say who you are, give a little elevator pitch, and then you pass business, right? So you're like, this week we had X amount of dollars passed. Lance with Forever Home Inspection gave the electrician business. He gave this person business. That gets person business, and that kept happening. I realized, oh, we're kind of a gatekeeper for other professionals.
Right.
We really are. And when they start realizing that, I need to build relationships with them. And they need to know that if I go into the field and I say this electrical issue is real, and they go, I trust Lance and I trust Forever Home Inspection or I trust Focus, when he gives me that report, this is gold. So I know that I can come in after that and go, yes, let's replace it. It's going to cost this much or whatever. What ends up happening is, again, it's one of those things where like, hey, my outlet tester didn't work. You need to get an electrician to come look at it. Right. I think it comes to us where we have to educate ourselves better. We have to
Yeah.
continually, we have to know systems as well as we can. And with as much education that's provided to us these days through Internachi or CCPIA or any whoever it is, there is a ton of information. We have to be educating and training weekly, monthly. If we're not, we're just the bare minimum. So, and that's what people are getting, and they're frustrated with it. So,
This might not be a hot take, but it maybe a medium hot take. I think in the next 5 years, the companies like yours that have this mentality are going to just all the value is going to accrue to them, and there's going to be a lot bigger, small to mid-sized multi-inspector companies that grow as a result of this as a base and a foundation because of the differentiation. And then all of the kind of vanilla generic ones, they'll pick off all the $200, $300 inspections and maybe limp along. But I really believe there's going to be some like great size companies, even maybe very profitable 5 inspector companies. You know what I mean? Like you might have 5, 10, 15 people, but run a freaking great operation that's really profitable. And that excites me.
well, and I mean, and, we're not without our challenges, right? Like we feel the market like everybody else does. You could be a wonderful company and 100 other people show up on the scene, like you're not going to get the same amount of inspections every week. Everyone's going to be picking out your profit. And you have to figure out, well, do we just sit in that and just deal with it until those people are gone? Because they'll go away eventually. Some of them will, some of them will rise through it. Or are we going to differentiate ourselves and be better? And then people are going to go, I remember Forever Home. I remember the value they provided. So that's what we're figuring out now, too. I don't want people to go, man, they're just, making millions and millions and millions and they're growing to the top. I mean, we're growing, but we're also still a small company and
Yeah.
we still have the same challenges as everyone else. And so I think that's why things like Empire Builder and stuff can be great to be able to bounce ideas off people. We're not a part of it, but I know people that are and they have benefit to it. But I also don't want to be an enemy to other inspectors. And I think that's why I like on the commercial side being able to teach to commercial inspectors, right? I'm one of the very first people in a group. There's only about 4 or 5 of us that I know of that are a part of CCPA that are teaching to inspectors on how to grow your business, on how to take this information and run. I want us to be an asset to one another rather than everybody is every man for himself, because that's kind of how it feels. And
Sure.
so in any good market, there's plenty of business for all of us. If you're good and you know what you're doing, there's
Yeah.
enough for us to be, you know, growing and helping each other. Because if there's 5 people who are in close contact with another, 5 companies, and you guys are doing really good and you're growing and you're bouncing off each other, then that's your competition. And my competition is solid. And all these other people won't last as long as we will. It will always be us at the top. And there's plenty of pie for everybody at that point. So I think that's what we have to go for. Could be
Great
wrong.
mentality. Yeah, the co-opetition. The pod I just published was 2 inspectors in the same market, different companies that consistently collaborate. They're consistently competing with the same, agents and brokerages,
Yeah.
but they've both grown and they both are taking market share from kind of the legacy competitors that are not really competing anymore. And it's a different mentality when you say, hey, if it's you and 2 other really high quality companies on the list, guess what? You're all charging what you're worth and more value will accrue to you. I have a question for you. So you're so giving, you've been on the pod, 2, 3 times by extension. What do you get from sharing this knowledge? Like why do you do it?
Um, there's something about it's something that I wish I had when I got started.
Mm,
Uh, when we got started, I think of myself as an inspector when I got started in 2017, and I am not the same human that I am today. I'm not the same inspector that I am today. If I go back and look at all those old inspections, I go, who was that guy doing inspections, right? Like I wish I was today, but everybody has to get started.
sure.
And I wish that I had those people to go to and ask questions. And because when I first started, I reached out to some inspectors in the field and they really didn't want to talk. It was kind of like you're my competition. Let's not get into conversation. as I've gotten older and I know there's, a handful of people that I trust in the community that are inspectors, we built better relationships. And, I may not always be an inspector, but I always want to be able to do what I'm doing in the capacity of teaching and learning and giving that information back. That's not to say, if CCPI Internachi said tomorrow, hey, we're going to make you the director of education, come take over, right? Like that would be something that would be a dream to be able to give that all
Sure.
that information back to people. And so that's how I want. And it's been tough because of our personal lives over the last year and how business has been going. I'm just now getting back to the point where I can able to teach and get back in front of people. And that's not just inspectors, that's agents too. We started a CE school a couple years ago, and I created courses where I teach agents
Yeah.
about homes, about systems, because they don't know. They just know how to do contract work, which is great. That's what they need to do, but they don't know about the basic nuances of homes. And I just feel like there's a lot of education to give people, and I just want to be a part of that. Right? That's what I'm excited about with CCPIA. Is like you said, commercial is still very nuanced and very new, and there's still tons of growth, and there's still tons of gray area, and I'm excited to be a part of this conference that Internachi's putting on. We're the first time to have commercial tracks, and there's only like 4 of us that are there, and we're kind of the first iteration of what commercial inspectors within this organization look like. And I'm excited to be a part of that. I'm excited to trailblaze that and see. And I don't have all the information. I'm not that smart. I'm not that intelligent. It's just I like to learn, and I like to be around people who like to learn. And I think that's what's helped us so far. So I don't think you can insulate yourself in this institution.
Yeah.
You've got to build relationships, and you've got to be around other like-minded people or people that are ahead of you. Because most people, I think, are willing to help. You just have to ask for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the right people that you probably want to be around are the ones that are willing and putting their hand out and helping. We should do some content together for kind of the Spectora network too, if you're open to it, like whether it's a webinar and make sure you're, compensated for your time. But that would be great. I think that would be amazing to put together some content to kind of spread this knowledge in any way we can. Because you're a gem in this industry. You're a treasure. The way you share and kind of the path you've carved out. So there enough people can't get in contact with you. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I can't reverberate this enough. I can't do it without Britt and Matt and Kaylin. Like I might be the inspector type of it, but Brittany is the marketing and the aspect of how to put your company together and package it. Matt is the finance guy and the company organization guy. Kaylin is the HR and the salesperson. And it's like we all have such a unique skill set, and it works together. It was really hard to add them because we realized, hey, we're going to have to take a really big portion of our income and give it to other people. But we also realized that we couldn't. I'll say this: Britt realized, because I was doing inspections, she was really running the business. Let's not hide that. She was carrying it on her back. But we realized we needed help, and when we brought people on, then we were able to grow again. Right? We were able to get over that, and sometimes that may not be adding leaders, but it's like this: adding people to your team in some way that can be helpful. And I would love to be a part of that. I know Britt and the other members would be too. So whatever that
yeah.
looks like, work for it. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we got to run, man. This time flies by when I talk to you. I love it. This has been great. I appreciate the deep dive on the commercial. So you'll be at the Internachi conference teaching this in 45 days, you said? Is one of the
Yep.
conferences?
So
Yeah.
October 12th through the 14th in Atlantic City. The Internachi has their professional inspector fair, and it is 2 full days of chock full of education and learning. If people can get there, certainly do so. I'm going to be teaching on Saturday about commercial inspections, how to gather information, life expectancy, and how to put costs and numbers to that. And so I hope if you're signed up, come to my class, because no one's better than me. And then just a little, we'll see if that helps me or makes it worse. I don't know.
Plug. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
got a little plug there, but no, I mean, come to the conference for sure. I hope Spector is going to be there. I'd love to see you guys there.
We'll be
Uh,
there.
yeah, maybe pull you guys up on stage for a minute too and talk about Spector, because I don't think we could do what we do without a company like Spector to be able to put it all together and be able to present something in a way that some companies just can't do. So, yeah.
All part of it. Need your expertise and communication and education, and we're kind of on the back end with the tech side. So I'll link again to the websites. Where can people find kind of more on the commercial side, just to see how you guys kind of make the website and communicate? It's give them the websites, and then I'll put them in the descriptions as well.
Yeah. So focusbuildinginspections.com. That is our commercial company. You'll see it's a very different website compared to foreverhomeinspection.com. But those are our websites. You can go to CCPIA. I don't know their full website, like .org or whatever. That's part of
Yeah.
InterNACHI. You can find information about us there and my upcoming class. I'm also taking the class and I'm teaching 2 hours at the conference, and I'm turning it into a 2-day class where it's going to be more personal. We're going to teach that in Boulder at the InterNACHI headquarters. So
Beautiful.
that'll be in February.
February,
Yeah.
we'll
So
come up for that. Get lunch and hang out.
it'd be great. Yep. That's how you can find me, or Facebook, whatever, man. My information's on there. Don't hesitate to reach out to us and ask questions.
Awesome, man. Thank you again for always being willing to share and jump on. You're a pleasure to talk to and work with. But I'll link to everything, the descriptions for everyone to kind of find you, Britt, and the team if they want to just chat and talk shop.
That sounds great. I appreciate it. I look forward to it.
All right, brother. Well, you guys take care. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate you.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Later.